How many times have you given up something important for somebody else, thinking it would make everything right? You sacrificed your time, your energy, maybe even your dreams, all to keep the peace or make someone happy in the back of your mind. You tell yourself, it's worth it that one day you'll get it all back. But here's the hard truth. When we constantly give pieces of ourselves away, we end up losing sight of who we really are. We start to feel drained, stretched thin, like we're no longer living for ourselves, but for others' expectations, and that feeling. It takes a toll on every part of our lives, on our happiness, on our health, and on our sense of purpose. Today, I want to talk about something the ancient Stoics knew well, knowing what's worth holding on to and what's worth letting go. The Stoics were masters at protecting their peace, at keeping their inner world steady. No matter how chaotic life got around them, they understood that to live a truly fulfilling life, there are certain things we should never sacrifice, no matter who or what is asking. So in this video, we're diving deep into 5 things you should never give up for anyone: your self-respect, your health, your dreams, your values, and your happiness. Each of these is a pillar of who you are, and once you let them go, it's a long, hard road to get them back. So if you've been feeling lost, or like you're sacrificing too much of yourself for others, stay tuned. Today isn't just about self-preservation. It's about reclaiming your inner strength and purpose, drawing wisdom from Stoic philosophy to help you hold on to what truly matters, because life is too precious and you are too valuable to let anyone or anything take away the things that make you who you are. Let's dive in. Self-respect is more than just a concept. It's the foundation of how we experience ourselves and the world. When you respect yourself, you're setting the tone for how others should treat you. You're saying, this is the standard. This is who I am, and this is what I won't tolerate. But when you start giving up that self-respect, maybe because you want to avoid conflict or you're afraid of losing someone's approval, you begin chipping away at your own sense of worth. And let's be real, without self-respect, everything else falls apart. The Stoics knew this well. Epictetus taught that respecting ourselves was one of the most powerful acts we could commit to. He often reminded his students that our inner sense of dignity is what truly defines us, not the judgments of others or society's expectations. Self-respect isn't about ego. It's about integrity. Ego wants everyone to see us a certain way, to make us feel important in the eyes of the world. But self-respect, that's about the relationship you have with yourself. It's about holding on to your values and staying true to your principles, no matter who or what tries to sway you. Now, here's the tricky part. It's incredibly easy to lose self-respect even without realizing it. Maybe you're in a relationship where you feel unheard or undervalued, but you stick around, thinking things will eventually get better. Or you might be at a job where you're constantly overlooked, underappreciated, but you keep showing up because, well, you need the paycheck. And besides, it's not that bad. We convince ourselves it's just temporary, that we can handle it. But over time, each little compromise, each let it slide moment slowly chips away at the respect you hold for yourself. You start doubting your worth, and that's a dangerous place to be. Marcus Aurelius believed that when we compromise our self-respect, we lose something fundamental: our alignment with our true selves, to live out of harmony with our values and our dignity. He argued, is to live a life of inner conflict. Imagine that an emperor, someone who could have had anything he wanted, choosing to live with strict discipline and honor, instead of indulging his every whim. because he understood that without self-respect, even the grandest of lives feels empty. Setting boundaries is one of the most crucial ways to protect your self-respect. And let's be honest, setting boundaries can feel terrifying. We're taught to be accommodating, to be easy, going to make others comfortable, even when it costs us our peace. But here's the thing. The Stoics would tell us, true peace comes from within. It comes from the courage to say no when something doesn't align with our values or respect our worth. Boundaries aren't walls. They're guidelines. They show others how to treat you, and more importantly, they remind you how you deserve to be treated. And here's where Stoicism anchors us again in Stoic practice. There's an emphasis on what's within our control and what isn't. We can't control how others react to our boundaries or our decisions, but we can control our commitment to self-respect. So if someone reacts poorly to your boundaries, if they call you difficult or selfish, that's on them, not you. The people who truly value you will respect your boundaries because they respect you. The Stoics were clear. True relationships, true friendships are based on mutual respect and understanding, not on what we can take from each other. Now, let's address the fear of losing people. It's natural to think, if I set these boundaries, what if people leave? But here's the thing, anyone who walks away because you're respecting yourself was never truly with you in the first place. Epictetus would remind us that we're not here to keep everyone happy, to bend ourselves into versions that fit others' needs. We're here to live with integrity, to honor our inner dignity. Self-respect is about making peace with the fact that not everyone will understand or like our boundaries. And that's okay when you prioritize self-respect. You set a standard that others notice, whether they say it or not. People see that you don't allow disrespect, that you won't be manipulated or undervalued. And over time, you'll find that you start attracting people who truly respect you. People who understand what real connection looks like. And, let's be honest, we've all seen people who settle for less than they deserve, who let themselves be treated like they're less valuable than they are. We watch from the outside, wondering why they stay in situations that don't serve them, and yet how often do we find ourselves doing the exact same thing? So, if you're in a place right now where you feel like you're constantly sacrificing your self-respect to keep the peace, to make others comfortable, I want you to pause and think, what are you really gaining? Is it worth losing yourself your dignity? As the Stoics would say, nothing outside of us is worth compromising the inner peace that comes from self-respect at the end of the day. Self-respect isn't just about how others treat you. It's about how you treat yourself. Do you speak kindly to yourself? Do you honor your own needs and boundaries? Or are you constantly putting yourself last? Remember, when you start respecting yourself, it's like building a fortress around your inner peace. No one can take that from you unless you give it away. Self-respect is the armor that keeps you steady, that grounds you when life gets difficult. And the beautiful thing is, the more you respect yourself, the less you need others' approval or validation. You'll find that you're living in alignment with who you truly are, just as the Stoics taught us to do. Self-respect isn't just something you practice now, and then it's a way of life. So guard it fiercely, because once you have it, everything else falls into place. We know that without health, nothing else matters, but we keep putting it off, telling ourselves we'll get to it. Once we've handled everything else, there's work. There are responsibilities, deadlines, people who depend on us. And then, almost as an afterthought, there's our health. But the Stoics would tell us that we're thinking about it all wrong. Health isn't something we sacrifice for later. It's the foundation we need for everything else. If we're not healthy, if we're not taking care of our bodies and minds, how can we ever hope to do anything well? Marcus Aurelius understood this deeply. He constantly reminded himself, and by extension us, that our bodies are temples, vessels that carry us through this world in meditations. He wrote about the importance of caring for our bodies as part of our duty to ourselves. It was simple logic to him. If the body fails, the mind follows, and with it all our aspirations and responsibilities. Stoicism teaches us to respect our nature, and our nature includes our physical and mental well-being. Ignoring that is like asking a tree to bear fruit without ever watering it. It just doesn't work. But here's where things get tough. The world we live in practically glorifies sacrificing health for the sake of ambition. We celebrate the hustle culture with people bragging about sleepless nights, skipped meals, and running on fumes as if it's a badge of honor. And for what? Money, status, approval? Sure, those things might feel rewarding, but they come at a cost. Let's be honest. How many successful people do we see who reach their goals, only to find themselves too exhausted or unwell to enjoy the success they've achieved? In the Stoic view, that's a tragedy. A misuse of life, they would remind us that true success is found in balance, not in burnout. Think about it this way. If we neglect our health, we're essentially pulling the very ground out from beneath us. If our bodies aren't strong, if our minds aren't clear, we're setting ourselves up to struggle in every other area of life. The Stoics had a word for this kind of unwise approach, a crazier or acting against our better judgment. They knew that we often ignore what we know is best for us, but they also urged us to fight against this impulse. Stoicism is about living wisely with discipline, and honoring the needs of both body and mind is central to that wisdom. Taking care of our health doesn't mean we have to become fitness fanatics or live on green smoothies. It's about balance, about making choices that support us, not drain us. For the Stoics, health was holistic. It was physical, mental, and emotional. They didn't separate the mind from the body, as so many do today. They knew that stress, anxiety, and emotional strain weigh on the body just as much as poor physical habits. Marcus Aurelius, for instance, believed in calming the mind and reducing stress as a pathway to health, noting that an agitated mind was a source of suffering that could physically weaken the body. In other words, mental peace is just as essential as a healthy diet or exercise. So where does that leave us? It means that taking care of our health is about consistency, not perfection. It's about listening to our bodies, knowing when we need rest, when we need movement, and when we need mental quiet. Yes, sometimes it means choosing to go to bed instead of answering one more email. Sometimes it means stepping outside for fresh air when you're feeling mentally drained. Sometimes it means saying no to the expectations of others, so you can say yes to your own well-being. Epictetus taught that freedom and happiness come from living in harmony with our nature, and part of that nature is the need to care for the vessel that carries us our health. Our culture has a way of making us feel like taking care of ourselves is selfish, like we're not doing enough if we prioritize our health. But Stoicism tells us something different. The Stoics would say that taking care of our health is a responsibility, a duty. After all, how can we be of service to others? How can we contribute meaningfully to the world if we're constantly running on empty? If we truly want to make a difference, to show up for the people who rely on us, we need to be healthy, self-sacrifice at the expense of health isn't noble, it's short-sighted. You can't pour from an empty cup, and you can't give what you don't have. When it comes to physical health, the Stoics were practical. They believed in taking care of the body as part of a disciplined, virtuous life. They didn't overindulge or neglect their bodies. They found a middle path. They exercised, ate mindfully, and avoided excess, not out of vanity, but because they saw the body as an instrument that needed to be maintained to serve the mind and soul effectively. So ask yourself, are you treating your body as the sacred vessel it is? Or are you pushing it to its limits, hoping it will just keep up with everything you throw at it? Because at some point, the body speaks back, and if we don't listen, it can force us to stop in ways we'd rather avoid. And let's talk about mental health for a moment. We don't often think of it as part of our health, but the Stoics, or mental peace, as essential. They practiced what we might call mental hygiene, taking time each day to reflect to clear their minds of unnecessary worries to focus on what's within their control. Stress, anger, and anxiety were seen as obstacles to a peaceful life, something to be managed carefully. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself to let go of things outside his control, recognizing that holding on to these stresses was both harmful and futile. So how often do we let stress run our lives? How often do we let small, uncontrollable things take up massive space in our minds? The Stoics would urge us to practice mental care as diligently as we care for our physical selves. Finally, let's acknowledge this, protecting. Your health takes courage. It takes courage to say, I need a break. It takes strength to step back and admit I'm burning out. Society might push us to keep going to power through, but that's not living wisely. The Stoics believed that we each have a responsibility to ourselves to live in balance. They tell us that living well means living sustainably, not as though we're in a constant race. So take care of your health, not just for the long run, but because your health is the one thing that allows you to be the best version of yourself, here and now. At the end of the day, you are the keeper of your own well-being. Your health, your physical, mental, and emotional state is what enables you to truly experience life, to find joy, and to achieve everything you set out to do. Don't sacrifice it for anyone or anything, because as the Stoics would remind us, health is a foundation, not a reward. It's the ground you stand on when you prioritize it. You're choosing a life of balance, peace, and strength. And that's something worth protecting every single day. Dreams aren't just fleeting wishes or fanciful ideas. They're deep-seated desires that drive us, that give life its color and meaning. Yet how often do we let them slip through our fingers? How many times do we put them aside thinking we'll get to them later, or that they're too unrealistic? The Stoics taught us to stay rooted in reality. Yes, but they also believed in fulfilling our purpose and walking the path that only we are meant to walk. And that's what dreams are, a path unique to each of us, a calling that no one else can answer on our behalf. The Stoics believed that each person has a role in life, a purpose tied to their character and capacities. They called it duty or nature. The idea that every soul has something unique to contribute to the world. Marcus Aurelius often wrote about the importance of living in accordance with our nature, of pursuing the things that align with our deeper purpose. So when we dismiss our dreams, we're not just letting go of a wish or fantasy. We're denying a part of ourselves, a part that's meant to be expressed and fulfilled. Dreams are more than ambitions. They're our potential reaching out, asking us to become who we were always meant to be. Yet dreams are vulnerable. It's all too easy to sacrifice them in the face of fear, doubt, or the skepticism of others. Maybe someone in your life told you that your dreams were too big or impractical. Maybe you've been conditioned to believe that pursuing a dream is a selfish endeavor, something you shouldn't prioritize. But here's the thing. The Stoics would argue that living without honoring your potential is a far greater tragedy than any failure you might face along the way. Epictetus once said, first, say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. He understood that the first step toward achieving anything is to embrace that vision, to claim it as part of who you are, and then to act with resolve and consistency. So let's talk about those fears. Dreams can be daunting because they often require us to step outside our comfort zones, to risk failure, and face challenges that feel insurmountable. But the Stoics were clear. Fear is a liar, a trick of the mind that keeps us bound to the familiar. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself that obstacles are part of life, that adversity is merely a chance to strengthen our character. When we face setbacks or rejection, we're simply being asked to refine our approach, to grow stronger and become more resilient. The Stoics called this the obstacle, becoming the way. Every challenge on the path to our dreams is actually a crucial step in our growth. So instead of letting fear shrink us, we should let it sharpen us. The problem is people around us sometimes project their own fears onto us. Friends, family, colleagues, they may mean well, but they don't see the dream the way you do. They might urge you to be realistic, to play it safe, to settle. But the Stoics teach us that our life is our responsibility. Others can't walk our path for us. They can't fulfill our purpose. They can't live our dreams. Epictetus advised his students to focus on what was within their control, which in this case means focusing on your own commitment to your dreams, rather than seeking validation or permission from others. The vision is yours, and if you let it go, no one else can carry it forward for you. Living a life without dreams is like going through the motions, without ever feeling alive. Think about it. When was the last time you felt genuinely excited, energized, or driven by something? Dreams do that for us. They give us purpose. They're like a fire that fuels our actions, giving us the motivation to overcome challenges and push forward, even when the going gets tough. And yes, that path might be long. It might not look the way you imagined. It might take you in directions you never expected. But that's the beauty of it. As the Stoics would say, the journey is part of the reward. Every step, every lesson, every challenge molds you into the person you need to become, to fulfill your potential. The Stoics also remind us that our dreams don't have to happen all at once. They believed in persistence and taking consistent action, even if it's small. Epictetus said no great thing is created suddenly. Just like a plant doesn't grow overnight, neither do our dreams. They need time, attention, and patience. Some days you'll make huge strides, and other days it might feel like you're not moving forward at all. That's normal. The Stoics teach us not to be discouraged by the slow progress, but to keep going one step at a time. Small steps over time lead to great transformations. And let's address another common roadblock: the idea that dreams are selfish. Many people believe that going after what we want, what we feel called to do, is somehow indulgent or self-centered. But here's where the Stoics would turn this thinking on its head. To them, fulfilling your potential wasn't selfish. It was a service to the world when you live in alignment with your purpose. When you chase after your dreams and become the best version of yourself, you inspire others to do the same. you become a force of good, contributing your unique gifts to the world. Marcus Aurelius believed that we all have a duty to make the world a better place, and one of the best ways to do that is by realizing our full potential. Your dreams are not just for you. They're your gift to the world, but let's not pretend it's all easy. There will be setbacks, times when you'll doubt yourself, moments when you'll feel tempted to give up. And in those moments, the Stoics offer us a lifeline. They remind us that setbacks are not failures. They're just part of the process. Every time you stumble, every time you face a no, you're simply being given a chance to build resilience. Marcus Aurelius wrote the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. So instead of seeing obstacles as reasons to give up, view them as opportunities to grow stronger and more determined. Remember, dreams aren't about reaching some final destination where everything is perfect. They're about the journey, the transformation that happens along the way, the person you become as you chase your dreams, the resilience you build, the lessons you learn, the growth you experience. That's the real reward. So don't sacrifice your dreams for anyone. Don't let fear or doubt hold you back. Don't let other people's opinions make you shrink. You are the only person who can bring your unique vision to life, and the world is waiting for you to do it. They're the core of who we are, the principles that guide us through life, and yet they're often the first things we're willing to compromise when we're under pressure. Maybe it's to fit in to get ahead or to avoid conflict. But here's the truth. When we start sacrificing our values, we're not just bending on minor points. We're giving away pieces of ourselves. Our values are what anchor us, what give our lives direction and meaning. The Stoics understood this better than most. To them, living in alignment with one's values wasn't optional. It was the entire purpose of life. They believe that if you let go of your values, you let go of the essence of who you are. Think of values as your internal compass. They're the beliefs and standards that help you navigate the complexities of life, showing you what's right and what's wrong, even when everything else feels uncertain. Marcus Aurelius was famous for holding on to his values no matter the situation. As one of the most powerful people in the world, he could have easily let power, luxury, and status sway him, but he chose instead to live with humility, discipline, and integrity. In his journal meditations, he constantly reminded himself to stay true to his principles, to live with virtue and kindness, regardless of what others were doing around him. That's a powerful lesson. Our values shouldn't change based on circumstances, they should be our constant. But the world doesn't always make it easy. Does it every day? We face situations that test our values. Maybe it's a workplace, where cutting corners seems to be the norm, or a friend group, where gossiping about others is part of the culture. Maybe it's a relationship, where you feel pressured to compromise your boundaries, just to keep the peace in these moments. It can feel easier to go along with what everyone else is doing, to avoid standing out or causing conflict. But the Stoics would warn us that the easy way is often the path away from virtue living. According to your values is rarely the easiest option. It requires courage, resilience, and a willingness to stand alone if necessary. One of the key Stoic virtues is integrity. Integrity means being whole, being consistent in your actions, words, and beliefs. It means that what you believe on the inside matches what you do on the outside. Epictetus, a Stoic philosopher who once lived as a slave, knew firsthand the importance of integrity. Despite his circumstances, He refused to let go of his principles, teaching that true freedom is found in the ability to stay true to oneself. No matter the external conditions, he once said, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. What he meant was that holding to your values even when others don't understand is a mark of strength. It's the kind of strength that can't be shaken by others. Opinions, setting, and upholding values is like building the foundation of a house. If that foundation is strong, the house can withstand any storm. But if it's weak, the whole structure is at risk. When we compromise our values, even in small ways, we're chipping away at that foundation. We're telling ourselves that maybe this one time it's okay to let it slide, that a little bending won't hurt. But the Stoics would argue that every compromise, every little exception we make to our values weakens the core of who we are. Once you start bending, it's hard to stop before you know it. You're living a life that doesn't align with who you truly are. And here's where Stoicism provides such powerful guidance. The Stoics teach us to focus on what we can control, and one thing we absolutely control is our commitment to our values. We can't control how others react or whether they understand or agree, but we can control how we show up, how we choose to act in the standards we set for ourselves. This is a powerful reminder because, in a world full of external pressures, it's easy to feel like our values are negotiable, but they're not. They're the unshakable parts of us, the principles that guide our choices. No matter how popular or convenient it might be to let them go, sticking to your values is a test of courage. It means saying no when others expect a yes. It means walking away from situations or people who don't respect who you are at your core. And that's tough, right? Sometimes it means disappointing people, facing criticism, or even losing relationships. But here's the thing. If someone or something is asking you to give up your values, then they're not truly aligned with who you are. The Stoics would say that no relationship, no job, no amount of success is worth sacrificing your principles. If anything, they would encourage us to walk away from what doesn't honor our integrity and seek out people and opportunities that do. The Stoic philosopher Seneca also believed that living in harmony with our values was essential to peace of mind. He saw values as a source of inner strength, a way to live free of regret and guilt. Imagine that kind of life, where you can look back on your decisions without feeling you betrayed yourself, where you don't have to make excuses for compromising your principles. When we stay true to our values, we live with a kind of quiet confidence, a calm assurance that no one can take away from us. We become unshakable because we know we're living in alignment with who we truly are. Now, some people might say that in today's world, sticking to your values is unrealistic, that it's idealistic or impractical. But the Stoics would challenge that notion. They'd argue that values aren't meant to be convenient. They're meant to keep us grounded, to help us live with dignity and purpose. Sure, there will be moments when holding to your values costs you something. Maybe it's an opportunity. Maybe it's a friendship. Maybe it's approval. But if you let go of your values for short-term gain, you're left with something hollow, something that ultimately doesn't fulfill you. True success, according to Stoicism, is not found in popularity or wealth, but in living a life true to your principles. Let's be real. There will be times when sticking to your values makes you feel isolated. It's not always easy to go against the grain, especially when everyone around you seems to be taking the easy road. But here's where the Stoic perspective is so powerful. They teach us that our purpose isn't to blend in or to please others. It's to live with honor, to uphold virtues like courage, wisdom, and integrity. If we choose our values over convenience, over comfort, we might stand out, but we also stand tall. And standing tall-rooted in our principles is far more fulfilling than the shallow comfort of blending in. So remember, your values are not up for debate. They're not meant to be adjusted to make others comfortable. They are yours to uphold, to protect, and to live by. When we live in alignment with our values, we don't just build a life, we build a legacy. We become examples of what it means to live with integrity, inspiring others to do the same. And at the end of the day, when you lay your head down at night, it's your values that will give you peace, the peace that comes from knowing you've been true to yourself. This is something we all chase, something we all want to feel deep down. But in today's world, happiness often feels like a distant goal, something we'll reach only after we've accomplished everything else on our to-do lists. How many times have we put off our happiness, telling ourselves, I'll be happy when I get that promotion, or I'll be happy once I'm successful enough, once I have enough. But here's the problem. Happiness isn't something you find at the end of a long journey. The Stoics would tell us that happiness is a byproduct of living in alignment with our values, of being at peace with ourselves, and of appreciating the present moment for what it is not, what we wish it would be. The Stoics had a word for happiness, eudaimonia. It doesn't translate to happiness in the simple sense of pleasure or excitement. It's more like flourishing or living well. It's the feeling that comes when you're living in accordance with your true self, with purpose and with virtue to them. Happiness wasn't about chasing external rewards, fame, or wealth. It was about cultivating inner peace, about mastering your mind and living with integrity. This kind of happiness isn't flashy. It's not about the highs that come and go. It's a deeper, steadier contentment, a fulfillment that stays with you even when life isn't going perfectly. But let's be honest. Society has taught us to place happiness on the back burner, to make it something we'll deal with later. We're taught that it's normal to work ourselves to exhaustion, to keep pushing and sacrificing all in the name of success, and we think one day it'll all pay off. But the Stoics would challenge that. They'd ask us, what's the point of reaching the top if you're too stressed or miserable to enjoy it? Marcus Aurelius, who held the weight of an empire on his shoulders, recognized the importance of finding peace in the present. He wrote about the dangers of constantly looking forward, of always thinking happiness was in some future achievement. Instead, he reminded himself daily to look inward, to find contentment in the simplicity of the moment. So what does it mean to protect our happiness? For one, it means being mindful of where we're investing our energy. It's easy to pour ourselves into things that drain us, jobs we don't love, relationships that feel one-sided obligations, that don't align with our true priorities, and when we constantly give our energy to things that deplete us, happiness starts slipping through our fingers. Epictetus would tell us that we need to be intentional about where we focus our energy. He taught that we're responsible for our own peace of mind, and that no one else can create it for us. It's up to us to cultivate it, to nurture it, to protect it from people or situations that steal it away. The Stoics also believed in the idea of ataraxia, which means tranquility or freedom from disturbance. It's a state of mind where you're not constantly tossed around by external events or the expectations of others. Imagine that a life where your happiness doesn't depend on the opinions of others, where you're not constantly worried about how others perceive you. The Stoics would say that true happiness comes from this inner tranquility, from focusing on what's within your control and letting go of what's not. When we get caught up in things we can't control, like other people's approval or the unpredictable ups and downs of life, we give away our happiness. Instead, the Stoics would encourage us to anchor ourselves in our own values to make peace with who we are, regardless of the noise around us. Another part of protecting our happiness is setting boundaries. It might sound simple, but boundaries are essential to a happy, peaceful life. They're our way of saying, this is what I need to feel whole, to feel well, to feel at peace. And yet how often do we let those boundaries slip? How often do we say yes to things we don't want to do, just to avoid disappointing others? The Stoics would remind us that our happiness isn't selfish. It's our responsibility. Happiness doesn't mean isolating yourself or cutting everyone out of your life, but it does mean being honest about what brings you joy and what takes it away. And if someone in your life doesn't respect your boundaries, the Stoics would tell you that this person may not be truly aligned with who you are or who you want to be. Happiness is also about gratitude, about learning to appreciate what we have instead of focusing on what's missing. Seneca talked a lot about this idea of enough. He believed that happiness was not about accumulating more, but about appreciating what we already have. It's easy to get caught up in the mindset that we'll be happy once we have more money, more success, more recognition. But Seneca would tell us to pause and look around. Do you have people who care about you? Do you have your health? Do you have moments of peace, however small? If so, then there's happiness to be found, right here and now. The Stoics practiced gratitude daily, not just as a nice idea, but as a tool to ground themselves in what was real and meaningful. Let's also talk about self-compassion, because protecting our happiness often starts with how we treat ourselves. The Stoics believed in being kind to oneself, in accepting our own humanity. We're going to make mistakes, fall short, have days where we don't feel our best, but instead of beating ourselves up, we need to treat ourselves with the same patience and kindness we would offer a friend. Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself about the importance of accepting his own imperfections, of remembering that he was human. When we practice this kind of self-compassion, we create space for happiness to grow. We stop holding ourselves to impossible standards, and we start appreciating the journey we're on, flaws and all. And here's a big one. Happiness isn't about constant pleasure. The Stoics would tell us that real happiness doesn't come from chasing pleasure or avoiding discomfort. Life is going to have its challenges, its dark days, its tough lessons, and sometimes we have to go through pain or struggle to grow, to become better versions of ourselves. The Stoics believed that happiness wasn't about avoiding hardship, but about building resilience, about finding meaning, even in the tough times. Epictetus once said that hardship introduces a person to themselves. So instead of fearing the rough patches, the Stoics would tell us to embrace them as opportunities to deepen our understanding, to strengthen our character, and ultimately to find a happiness that's rooted in resilience, not in ease. So protecting your happiness means understanding that it's not something you arrive at. It's something you cultivate daily. It's a practice, a commitment to finding peace within yourself, rather than looking for it in the outside world. It's about being selective with who and what you allow into your life, about setting boundaries that guard your inner peace, about focusing on gratitude and letting go of the endless chase for more, and perhaps, most importantly, it's about making choices that honor who you are at your core, Happiness isn't about bending to fit other people's expectations. It's about living a life that feels true to you. The Stoics would say that when we live this way, when we find contentment in the present, cultivate gratitude, build resilience, and let go of things beyond our control, we create a happiness that can't be shaken. It's not flashy or dependent on the highs and lows of life. It's a quiet, steady joy that's rooted in knowing you're living with purpose and integrity. And at the end of the day, that's what happiness is really about. Not fleeting pleasure or constant excitement, but a deep sense of fulfillment, a peace that comes from living in alignment with what truly matters to you. So don't sacrifice your happiness. Don't let anyone convince you that it's selfish to protect your peace, to seek out joy, to live a life that feels good to you. Happiness is not a luxury or a reward for hard work. It's part of a well-lived life, and it's within your reach here and now. The Stoics would remind us that we have everything we need to be happy within us. It's just a matter of cultivating it, protecting it, and letting go of the things that stand in its way. So guard your happiness fiercely, because when you do, you're choosing to live a life that honors the deepest part of who you are. So as we wrap up, remember this: your self-respect, health, dreams, values, and happiness. These are the pillars that make you who you are. Life may challenge them. Others may ask you to compromise them. But these are the things worth protecting above all else. In a world that often pulls us in 1,000 directions, staying true to what matters isn't just strength, it's freedom. Thank you for being a part of the real Stoic path.